BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. This episode of Black Box Online Radio is brought to you by Rep Sports and Raze Energy. Are you a fan of energy drinks, protein shakes, and health foods? Well, I sure am. I use the stuff almost every single day. They sell Raze Energy products at my local gym, but you can have them shipped to your home. Use the coupon code NED075, that's NED075, for discounts applied at the checkout. The link is in the description box.
No, sure, I was one of the kids that were terrorized in the school buses by the Zodiac in 1969.
Oh, right, that's right.
But I'd long since let it go. And when our whistleblower Will came to us, right, I didn't believe it, but then he gave me the name, Gary Francis Post. And at that point on, since you could see it in the Halloween card, folks, if you want to know more about these anagram solutions, the best article to go to is just Google my name, Dale Julin, Zodiac Killer, and Tahoe Tribune. That was published a couple days later from.
And in that presentation, you could hear Dale Julin, author of the upcoming book Catching Zodiac, on the Case Breakers YouTube channel talking about Gary Francis Post as a Zodiac Killer suspect. And their channel is just called The Case Breakers if anyone would like to visit their material. But Dale recommended a particular article that had been written by the Tahoe Tribune, and I wanted to respond to that. To be honest with you guys, this episode was completely done, and then I encountered this video, which came out just several days ago, an actual piece of Zodiac Killer news. So I wanted to share some things that were in this article that Dale Julin recommended, as he said, the definitive article about him. But first I would like to give a shout out to YouTube user Charles Goretti, who has also shared a lot of the Case Breakers claims. Charles has just put this stuff in the comment section here on Black Box Online Radio, and as I understand it, Charles doesn't have any direct affiliation with the Case Breakers. He simply follows them and supports their theory that Gary Francis Post was the Zodiac Killer. And he writes, "Let's keep an open mind to all possibilities. Gary Francis Post was brought to the attention of a news reporter named Dale Julin in 2014 from a close friend of Post." And I'm going to jump ahead to some parts that are covered in the article. I'll just respond to one major claim here, and that is that the Case Breakers believe that the clues on the Halloween card are twofold. One of them deals with the disappearance of Donna Lass from 1970, and the other one is that Gary Post carved some words into a tree near his home that resemble the Zodiac's Halloween card. And Charles writes, "The Case Breakers literally found a tree near his home where the Halloween card, Boo, and the pictures were carved into the tree with him taking a picture of it. Case Breakers is making a documentary coming out with all of this next year, and they will show us." Okay, so on the Tahoe Daily Tribune, they have the photos that they were discussing here, that Charles was discussing, rather, and I will just share with you guys a photo of the tree in question, and you can let me know if you think that this looks like the Zodiac Killer's Halloween card, the gouged tree. Now, Dale Julin the guy you heard in that little video clip, is someone who believes that the cards contain an enormous amount of meaning. Not only the Halloween card, the Peek Through the Pines card, they also have very precise meanings, and he actually believes the artwork on the Halloween card has a solution. It is a cipher in its own right, and the article says, his solution to the Halloween card sent on October 27th of 1970 is, bye bye birdie, time to fly, A-OK, upside down N, Nurse Donna Lass's body is 14Y14 up in a tree in a hollow log ponderosa pine tree. E by night you'll see her now approaching lunar sunrise and Scorpius blue lock up gully view. Y by CB MNZ 85 degrees southeast of Zephyr Cove, 4 miles east of State Line on the Hootin' Tootin' MS Dixie ship. OOD take the helm. Aye aye Captain Gary Francis Post, CC Frank Borman. So, that solution was revealed in the article. What it did not say was how Dale Julin was able to get these clues. I mean, the 14 on the Halloween card, there is a 14 there, okay. And I did misread one thing. It's not 14Y14, Y14Y, but just the letter Y, not the word. I'm very curious to know how Dale came up with these solutions, and as we said, they have a book coming out and a documentary that is coming out. Now, in that video, if you do watch it, though, there is a reference to a particular boat, the Hootin' Tootin' MS Dixie ship, and somebody challenged Dale Julin on that, someone who is very familiar with Lake Tahoe, saying that the MS Dixie didn't dock there at Zephyr Cove, or on that particular dock until 1972, which would have been 2 years after the Zodiac Killer would have written this Halloween card, as well as 2 years after the disappearance of Donna Lass, but more importantly, it wouldn't have been there at the time of the composition of the card. And Dale Julin says he can refute that and says that the boat was actually there in the 60s. I'm curious how it all plays out. I doubt the person who shared those facts with him was simply making it up, and Dale seems like he has a response of his own. But what do you think? Do you see any thing in the tree of the that resembles the Halloween card, or is that just a tree with a couple of pieces of bark missing? I'll leave it up to you guys. Okay, now here is the intro to today's full episode. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. Just a couple of quick announcements before we begin. The first is that if you are a fan of comic books, there is a new comic available from Planet X called Dark Rift. Big shout out to Ross and all of the Planet X affiliates. Ross runs the YouTube channel Planet X Filmworks, and I thought that that was the entirety of his operations. Boy, was I wrong. There's also Planet X Records, now Planet X Comics, a lot of things going on over there. I invite you to subscribe to his channel and follow on social media. And like many of the Zodiac Killer news reports, I would like to begin with a challenge question. You guys know that I follow the YouTube channel Oak Leaves and Onions, and there was one question that was being discussed over there in one of the episodes, and that was, should you join a club or a group to meet a romantic partner? And you can think of this as an icebreaker. If you have anything to share, you can put your ideas in the comments section down below if you want to respond to the challenge question as well. Should you join a club or a group if you want to meet a romantic partner? Because the host of that program was discussing this one, and she said something about how she had always wanted to join the beekeeping society in whatever part of the country she lives in. She doesn't actually tell us where she's from or where she is currently based, which I have no problem with, but that really stood out to me, something like that, because my response to this question is both yes and no. I think that if you were to join something like a beekeeping society and your intention was to meet a romantic partner, unless it's in a very large major city, well, you gotta wonder what kind of beekeeping goes on in a large major city, but you're probably going to encounter 21 people in the Beekeepers Society, 18 men, and 3 women. And those 3 women are probably going to be married to people who are the other guys in that group. So just trying to like piece 2 and 2 together, and I would think that if you were trying to join a group or a club to meet a romantic partner, you would want to join one that is very, very large. That is just going to be a numbers game. Expand your options and probability will be on your side. So find out how many members are in the group first before you join. But the second reason why I wanted to use that as the challenge question was because the host also brought up something that I had never quite heard before, and that is that if you want to meet a romantic partner, first, get yourself an extroverted friend. Try to be friends with somebody who is very high in trait extroversion. Why would you do this? Because extroverted people are good at attracting other people into their inner circle. In fact, according to her analysis, some friendships are even just one extroverted person with 4 or 5 introverts who are operating around this extroverted person. And believe it or not, I actually think that that's not a bad idea. But there's also something that I heard about on the channel The Rational Male, which is hosted by Rollo Tomasi, and he talked about how there's a difference between being an attraction and an attractor. Some people behave a certain way when they're trying to meet a romantic partner because they think that's what I would want someone to do for me. Well, I would want someone to behave this way toward me. I would want someone to be nice and friendly, but still sexual, right? However, the reason why that approach, nice, friendly, but still having this expectation of sexuality, often fails is you're not being the attractor. You're acting like the attraction. And what he's going down the pathway of is opposites attract, or it's about creating energy, or there needs to be some type of reason about why someone should be attracted to you. And the whole point is, it's not about what you want. You have to start thinking, how would the other person expect someone to approach them, and what does the other person want? What is going to attract the other person? Not simply thinking that everybody is going to behave or want the exact same things that you do at any given time. So I think without that type of mindset, whatever type of group or club or society that you join will perhaps not go too well, but I would stand by the numbers game. Overall, dating seems like a numbers game. And if you would like to respond to the challenge question, should you join a club or a group if you want to meet a romantic partner? I would love to read your comments and messages down below. But to move on, as I said in the intro, I am the author of the book Killer on a White Horse, and it is a novel that is available on Amazon.com for purchase. There's a link in the description box, and I would like to look at some of the reviews from this and share them with you guys, because first I would like to give a shout out to Max, and I think that's Max Alberts, the follower of BBOR, who says, "A brilliant self-published first novel. Attention acquisition editors everywhere. This wonderful, bizarre, gripping novel needs to be published by a large house. Its author, Ned DeHaan, writes with the rhythm of a young Hemingway, and I'm not exaggerating." Hey, Max, thank you so much. I believe this novel was self-published but deserves a large readership and such as St. Martin's Press to really get the publicity it requires. This is DeHaan's first novel, and his prose is already masterful. Please, acquisition editors out there, give Ned DeHaan a whirl, and you will not regret it. I mean, absolutely much appreciated to Max there. And if that is you, Max Alberts, Max has been a very long listener to this program. I believe he started listening to the show back in 2018. Max Alberts was the first person to tell me that he liked my broadcasting voice, so thank you for all of your support. And I would also like to give a big shout out to Jerome, who posted a very good review. Jerome from the French Wrecking Crew. Excellent book, great story, inspired by the Zodiac killer mystery. Oh yes, as well as the Manson connection. Really well written. I highly recommend this book, and Jerome even posted a photo on Amazon.com. But, as you can see from the title, This is also the hate mail edition of the Zodiac Killer News Report, and we have somebody who posted anonymously saying, "Terrible book, written by an immature child. You will regret buying this. Bad grammar and spelling, and Ned thinks and writes like he knows something, but he doesn't." And I was like, wow. But as you'll see there, that is the only person who reviewed the book and is not a verified purchaser. So it looks like I have an enemy out there. And I began to think, me have an enemy? Who on earth could that be? Who hates my guts? Well, I'm sure those people, the case breakers, don't like me. The people who thought that Gary Francis Post was the Zodiac killer, and, well, I absolutely disagreed with everything they said. And I was like, would that really be Dale Julin or Thomas Colbert? You would think that those guys have better things to do. But, in all honesty, though, this thing about, bad grammar and such, when I got my paperback copy of Killer on a White Horse, the same way everyone else does, and I held it in my hands for the first time, and I flipped through it a little bit. Yeah, I did see some things that I didn't catch in the editing process, and there are some grammatical issues. In one place, I saw that I should have used a question mark where the sentence just ended with a period, wrong piece of punctuation here and there. And that's unacceptable. Even if it's just happening a few times, it's still unacceptable because when you're putting out something like a novel, you really want to get it as close to completely perfect as possible in regards to grammar and spelling. So believe it or not, I won't dispute that with you, but as far as who hates my guts, well, I received a comment recently from somebody named Brian Hardgrave who said, "Black Box would be more palatable if the narrator didn't digitalize the voice." Now, I hope you know what digitalize means, Brian, but do you really think that what you're listening to right now is a digitalized voice? Oh wait, my computer equipment is breaking up. Yeah, sorry, okay, we're stabilized now. You really think that this is a computer voice? What is it, just like electrifying infinite time? Yeah, I can't really help you too much there, dude. But I also received a comment on the most recent Anything Goes Friday episode when I was talking about the disappearance of Tara Calico, and Chip Robertson says, "My God, blabbering unlimited." And I was really quite surprised to see that because for the Anything Goes segment, I thought that that was one of the most clear-cut, stick-to-the-point episodes that I've ever done. Normally, they're going to be like this, a very long, extended, rambling in all types of directions. But in that episode on Terra Calico and the Polaroid mystery, I really thought that I was just doing one point after another. And if you would like to hear a more condensed version when I try to recreate that, you can follow along with the timestamps on this episode and jump ahead to that at the end. Like at all of these Zodiac Killer news reports at the end, I'll stick around and chat with you guys for a second. But to get to our first piece of Zodiac news, there is one more piece of hate mail, and that comes to us from the cat when we had the true piece of Zodiac hatred coming my way. The only reason Ned even does these shows is for the little money he gets. He wouldn't know the truth if it was shoved in his face, which it has been. LOL. Both him and Tom Voight have their heads so far up their ass, singular, with the Zodiac killer, but especially Voight, saying they know so much about the case when they really know nothing. Especially Voight. Oh, well, I guess, that's good for me, lucky day. The Suenin family think you're a joke. You had the truth and you can't even debunk my theory. Neither can Voight. Nobody can debunk it, period. If you think you can, then do it. Debunk my theory. Thing is, you can't. And that is, once again, from YouTube user The Cat. So, what on earth is this person talking about? Well, Last year on the channel, I did 2 episodes about the Zodiac Killer Merchant Marine theory. Both of them are covering the same subject. It's just like a first draft and a second draft. 2 different takes on the subject, if you will. And the reason why I believe the cat is so fired up is last year I did something that I should not have done, and I will hopefully never do again. I made an agreement with someone that I would not tear their theory apart in exchange for hearing a story. The cat contacted me just by listening to BlackBoxOnlineRadio and said that she was the daughter of Darlene Ferrin, the victim of the Zodiac Killer's Blue Rock Springs shooting, who passed away. The other victim was Mike Michaud, but he survived. That occurred on July 4th of 1969. And the cat said that she was the illegitimate daughter of Darlene Ferrin. Darlene had a daughter named Dina, who is perhaps a little bit more well-known. And in exchange for this person telling me their story, that she was the daughter of Darlene Ferrin, I decided not to tear her theory apart. I shouldn't have said agreed, because she didn't ask me to do that. What she had said was that she had previously contacted Tom Voigt and Thomas Henry Horan about her story, and they tried to tear her theory apart. So when she was speaking to me, she said she was very nervous, and I just decided, in exchange for hearing about Darlene Ferrin and the cat's biological father, I would not tear her theory apart or challenge it or provide any type of counter arguments or be a contrarian in any way. That was a mistake because she then began to think that I was some type of diehard believer in her theory, and it is that Darlene Ferrin was having an affair with a much older merchant marine, and he would have been 59 years old when he met Darlene Ferrin, and by the time of the Zodiac crimes that occurred in the late 1960s, this guy would have also been in his early 60s. We have given him the alias name Robert Kimball, and it starts out with this guy had met up with Darlene Ferrin, and they even developed a relationship. He even took her to the Virgin Islands, and that was when she was pregnant, and she actually gave birth to the cat in the Virgin Islands. And then they had some types of parting of ways, if you will. And this guy, the merchant marine Robert Kimball, who's again a much older man, is not only working with the merchant marines, he's also with the CIA. He's somewhat of a not exactly high-ranking individual, but a very important individual, and he is supporting Darlene Ferrin financially, and after months, I mean going on practically years of sending her money every month, when he's on land in California trying to see her, she blows him off. She's already married to somebody else and wants nothing to do with him, but she's still accepting his money. So on December 20th of 1968, this guy, Robert Kimball, went out looking for Darlene Ferrin, and he attempted to murder her, but in a case of mistaken identity, he murdered Betty Lou Jensen instead, and of course David Faraday was simply just caught in the crossfire. More likely wrong place at the wrong time, but the female was the target. Then this guy has 7 months when he is just like, oh no, I did the absolute wrong thing, and he attempts to actually murder Darlene Ferrin a successful time, and he is able to achieve that on July 4th of 1969. But the real issue with the cat's theory is that there are 2 participants in the Lake Berryessa stabbing. Yes, indeed, she does have a group murder theory, and that is that on September 27th of 1969, 2 people were involved with the murder of Cecilia Shepard and the stabbing of Brian Hartnell at Lake Berryessa, and one person wrote the message on the car door, Robert Kimball, this guy who has done all of the Zodiac stuff, and then the murder was actually committed by her uncle, who would have been Robert Kimball's brother. His name is Breckenridge. You can just think of him as Breck for short. And then Paul Stein is murdered on October 11th of 1969 for several reasons, but by this point it's also just about committing a series of murders to cover up the previous crimes that have been committed. Okay, how on earth would I debunk that theory? Well, firstly, I would say that 2 participants in the Lake Berryessa stabbing is almost certainly impossible because of the forensics that were examined, the footprints that are seen walking from the, well, mainland toward the lake and then back toward Brian Hartnell's Carmanguia. There is only a single set of footprints, not 2. And I'm not simply making that up. If we go to Zodiac Killer Just the Facts, which is the typed version of the police reports compiled by Tom Foyt, and on page 234 it says, at approximately 0800 hours on September 28th of 1969, reporting officer together with Sergeant Richard Lonergan followed the suspected footprints down the hill toward the lake to the point of the attack and then back to the parking area. Plaster casts were made of a heel print at the bottom of the first hill, and another cast was taken of a complete footprint at the junction of the trail and a dirt road approximately 50 feet from that point, where Ranger Dennis Land discovered victim Brian Hartnell. A footprint in the sand approximately 100 feet from the point of attack, bearing the suspected tread pattern, which also showed a circular design in the instep area of the print, was photographed and cast. And the real issue with her theory about these 2 participants is, in the past I had thought that one of them arrived on land, the perpetrator, the uncle that is, and then one of them arrived by boat and then walked to Brian Hartnell's Carmanguia and wrote the message on the car door. But in the comments that we exchanged after she left me that very lovely message a couple days ago, she said that both of them arrived by boat. Well, again, both of these scenarios are in complete contradiction to this. Did you guys not hear that? There is only a single set of footprints that have been examined, and that where they made the casts of them. And not only that, there is a footprint in the sand, but it has the same tread pattern as the single set of prints that is moving up and down across the Lake Berryessa area near the attack. To be very honest with you, my entire thesis statement of this whole debunking exercise is that I believe the cat has read a fair amount about the Zodiac Killer mystery, which is admirable, and it is commendable in some ways, but what I believe she is doing is she's projecting her own story onto it, possibly reading something like this report here, and then looking at the footprint in the sand, thinking that because that's so close to the lake that somebody must have arrived by boat, when in reality it's quite the opposite, and in fact it's the exact opposite. And because I had discussed this theory with the cat in the past, I've always just been paying attention to other Zodiac claims that resemble these types of observations. For example, this whole thing about the case of mistaken identity involving Betty Lou Jensen and Darlene Ferrin, that is also found in a different Zodiac Killer book, and that is My Name is the Zodiac, the one by a concerned citizen. You may have seen it with the light blue plain cover, and that says very clearly, while the investigators were satisfied that David and Betty Lou were not involved in any drug dealings, perhaps this was a case of mistaken identity. And I mean, again, that's not really her own original observation. That is found in somebody else's book. So, as I said, she's most likely read a lot about the case and had this type of desire to incorporate herself into it, being the daughter of Darlene Ferrin. Now, is she actually the daughter of Darlene Ferrin? I have no idea. I know she has direct contacts with the Suenin family, and it's a little bit more than just that comment that she left. She is active with them on Facebook, and they don't seem to dispute that. Darlene Ferrin's maiden name was Suenin. Her siblings are like Linda and Leo and Pam. Pam was perhaps the most famous. But the cat would go on to bring in some additional layers into her theory. Not only is she accusing her father, the merchant marine Robert Kimball, of being the Zodiac Killer because he was a CIA operative, more or less, for lack of a better term, or he worked for the CIA. I shouldn't call him an operative. He was also involved with the escape from Alcatraz in 1962, as well as a host of other crimes. Maybe had some things to do with D.B. Cooper. She said that she had his DD-214, and she could place him in Texarkana in 1946, and I'm sure some of you can already see where this is going. A Zodiac killer escape from Alcatraz connection that might be connected to D.B. Cooper and Texarkana. Yes, that is the same narrative that is available in David Gould's My Dance with the Zodiac Killer. That's just that. The guys involved with the escape from Alcatraz, Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin, went on to do the Zodiac Killer crimes, as well as every crime under the sun and in the darkness. But I think that the cat is superimposing herself into the story. The only differentiation between David Gould's work and hers is that she says that her father was an additional participant to all of these things, or maybe even the only person involved with something like the Phantom Killer mystery. Okay, it's not Frank Morris, it was Robert Kimball, but I absolutely do not think that there is an ounce of credibility to either one of those claims. So, I had the opportunity once to confront the cat about the similarities between her Zodiac Alcatraz theory and David Gould's Zodiac escape from Alcatraz theory. And I asked her flat out, you must be familiar with My Dance with the Zodiac Killer by David Gould. How do you account for all these similarities? And she said, I think that David Gould has encountered his findings through research, but they're just simply off by a little bit. Like, the idea of he's going down the right track, he just missed it by a little, and it's not Frank Morris who is responsible for all of these crimes, it's Robert Kimball. And well, my response, again, as I said, not going to tear her theory apart, I decided not to do that, was something that I heard from Mark Hewitt, actually author of Hunted, Profiled, and Exposed, about the Zodiac Killer. And his assessment of David Gould was that he's not a liar. This Zodiac Alcatraz connection isn't made up completely. Instead, he is making observations about these true crime cases, and he is using a storytelling mechanism where David Gould says that he has met these people and they have told him all of these stories about the Zodiac Killer in the Halloween card, and this is how it was composed, and this is why this letter was written, and this was the first time the Zodiac created a hooded costume, and that's the reason why it was worn at Lake Berryessa, because it all relates to his youth experiences in Tampa, Florida, and so on. And when I talked to the cat about that, her response was that, no, I don't think David Gould is just telling stories. He has learned this through research. But I think Mark Hewitt is doing that. Just that sentence. I think Mark Hewitt is doing that. Oh yeah, like how Mark Hewitt says that he grew up with the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, and he was stalked by the Unabomber for 30 years, and how he wrote a book called My Dance with the Unabomber. No, what are you talking about? Absolutely not. That was just a dodge or a deflection. We're trying to just put the focus onto somebody else so they didn't have to explain why their theory seems exactly like somebody else's theory. But I have to stand by my original observation in all of this, that the cat could have perhaps made some really good observations about the Zodiac case and could have written her own story in a very good way if she just didn't have that desire to be the central point of it all. And she didn't have this need to say that her father was the Zodiac killer. And I think that she does believe that much, but you might be wondering, why did this person all of a sudden decide to write me this nasty message and asking me to debunk her theory? Well, last week on the Zodiac Killer News Report, I asked you guys the question, was the Zodiac Killer left-handed? And I talked about how some people like Robert Graysmith and Lyndon Lafferty, and now the case breakers, have said that their suspects, Arthur Lee Allen, William Joseph Grant, and Gary Francis Post, respectively, were all ambidextrous. But I also said that a woman once contacted me saying that her father was the Zodiac Killer, and she was going to send me some samples of his handwriting. And I said, okay. And then she said, oh yeah, but before I send you these handwriting samples, I need to let you know that he was ambidextrous, so I'm not sure which hand he was writing with. And I included her in that group that I was discussing last week. Yes, that was the cat that I was referring to. And I was saying that all of these people simply are just using that as a cop-out, or they're using that as some type of distraction to explain why somebody's handwriting doesn't match, or just to be a little bit confusing. And that is perhaps the only time I think that the cat genuinely lied to me. Other times, I think that she is just simply mistaken. I mean, she definitely believes her theory. She's not someone who's just making it up. Now, is it true? Absolutely not. But I think the only time she actually lied to me with intent was about her father being ambidextrous, because she never even sent the samples of his handwriting. I think she got nervous because it most likely didn't appear to be similar enough to the Zodiac killers, and she was thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to tell him that my father was ambidextrous, and then maybe he'll fall for it. But that's just as she probably didn't send the handwriting at all, because she knew that plan wasn't going to work, and it wouldn't, because all of those people that I mentioned are most likely talking about someone who isn't that ambidextrous. They even say this in the 2007 David Fincher film. No one is that ambidextrous. And I was getting into a little bit of it last week, but it's an important point that needs to be reiterated. Some people have some mild abilities with ambidextrous behavior, like they can use both of their hands, left hand and right hand, to a certain extent. Like we were talking about some examples, like maybe some people can throw a ball with both hands, or that some people can write a little bit with both hands, or even just they might be able to master a few types of ambidextrous behaviors, but not all, not completely ambidextrous. So, in conclusion, the cat has a very wild theory that is dealing with the escape from Alcatraz, the CIA, and this whole merchant marine theory, which, well, I guess I just have to get to the bigger point. I wish that she hadn't pissed me off, last year when we were discussing this, because I could have showed her how to tone down her theory and make it presentable to the general public. I mean, just adding in all of these wild layers about Alcatraz and the Phantom Killer and D.B. Cooper and the CIA. Yeah, no one is ever going to believe that. And people don't listen to David Gold's YouTube channel, or watch it rather, because they want to know the truth. No, they just want to hear what some outrageous guy is going to say next, or what wild story is he going to be telling later on. And for the record, David Gold absolutely insists that these are not theoretical things or things that he learned through research. He is crystal clear about it. He says that these are memories that he has of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers and all the things that he has done. Now, how does he have these memories? Well, in the comment section on his YouTube channel, somebody asked him that, and like, how are you able to recall all of these details from things 50 years ago? And he said he uses a technique to unlock memories. So I don't know if he's like meditating and thinking about the stuff, or daydreaming and thinking about it. But the whole point is that even her assessment of David Gold is, well, inaccurate, to be honest, but based on the similarities in language to things in other Zodiac publications, including the case file, my ultimate conclusion is that there's just a lot of borrowed ideas, and someone just couldn't resist saying, my daddy was the Zodiac. Okay, what do you think? And I think that will mostly close the door on her version of the merchant marine theory. However, it's important to note that that doesn't mean that any theory involving a merchant marine is useless, because there is something called the Tarbox confession, which even has a section on the Zodiac Killer's Wikipedia page where a lawyer named Robert Tarbox allegedly received a confession from somebody. saying that he was the Zodiac killer, and he paid a small fee. I think it was $50 or something thereabouts, and he wanted Tarbox to represent him as his attorney, and that's the only real information that we have. He paid a small fee, he was asking for a lawyer, said he was the Zodiac killer, and he was a merchant marine, walked out of the office, and was never seen or heard from again by Tarbox. But some people think that the Tarbox confession is legitimate, that that person was indeed the Zodiac killer, and the attorney-client privilege with lawyers is very strong. In fact, some people say that the attorney-client privilege with lawyers is even more powerful than medical privilege, like medical confidentiality, because as I understand it, the attorney cannot reveal anything about this person's identity as long as he is currently alive. I've discussed the Tarbox confession with Drew Beeson, author of Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer, and he can correct me if I misstate any of this, but it was my understanding that he disputed the Tarbox confession. He did not think that it was authentic because even if somebody were to go into a law office knowing all that stuff about legal confidentiality, giving his real name to anybody and saying that he was the Zodiac killer to anyone just didn't seem like something the Zodiac would do. It was just too much of a risk, and it was also an unnecessary risk because the Zodiac hadn't been charged with any crimes at that point, or at the very least, the person, Tarbox's merchant marine, was not under suspicion or hadn't been arrested. He certainly wasn't being interrogated by the police. I mean, to the best of our knowledge, maybe something happened that I am unaware of, but I can definitely follow Drew's line of thinking that this is just some guy who is saying some far-out, wacky and random things. And let's not kid ourselves, those things do happen. Those things definitely do happen. Sometimes people confess to crimes that they didn't commit for a whole host of reasons. But I would like to move on to the next segment here on the Zodiac Killer News Report, and because it is a news report, I do want to share something with you guys that I've been working on something with the Zodiac Killer channel, which will be released in the near future. It's called Serial Killer Z to A. It will be a podcast series that will talk a lot about the material that was covered in the Zodiac Killer's three-part documentary series, Obsession into Darkness, and you can hear those episodes on the Zodiac Killer channel right now, but a lot of the material has been reshaped, if you will, into the podcast format, and that will be available in the near future. And I was doing a segment with the Zodiac Killer channel where we were discussing the Little List letter, and I would like to read that for you here. And there's a secondary motivation for that, because last week on the Zodiac Killer News Report, I was talking about the material from Mike Morford and Michael Ferguson, the guys who are on the Criminology podcast, and they recommended reading the Zodiac's August 4th letter from 1969 in its entirety. So, right now, I would like to read the text of the Zodiac's Little List letter, one that I haven't talked about much here on this channel. This was mailed in 1970. It's one of the later Zodiac communications, definitely well after all of the Zodiac's crimes, even after the Kathleen Johns incident. And the text is as follows. This is the Zodiac speaking. Being that you will not wear some nice buttons, how about wearing some nasty buttons, or any kind of Zodiac button that you can think up? If you do not wear any type of buttons, I shall, on top of everything else, torture all of my 13 slaves that I have waiting for me in paradise. Some of them I shall tie over anthills and watch them scream, and twitch, and squirm. Others shall have pine splinters driven under their nails, then burned. Others shall be placed in cages and fed salt beef until they are gorged, and then I shall listen to their pleas for water, and I shall laugh at them. Others will hang by their thumbs and burn in the sun. Then I will rub them down with heat to warm them up. Others I shall skin alive and let them run around screaming. And all billiard players, I shall have them play in a darkened dungeon cell with crooked cues and twisted shoes. Yes, I shall have great fun inflicting the most delicious of pain to my slaves. As someday it may happen that a victim must be found, I've got A little list. I've got a little list of society offenders who might well be underground, who would never be missed, who would never be missed. There is the pestilential nuances who write for autographs, for all people who have flabby hands and irritating laughs, all children who are up in dates and implore you with I'm Platt, all people who are shaking hands, shake hands like that, and all third persons who with unspoiling take those who insist, they'd none of them be missed, they'd none of them be missed. There's a banjo serenader, the others of his race, and the piano organist, I've got him on the list. All people who eat peppermint and vomit it in your face, they would never be missed, they would never be missed. And the idiot who phrases with the enthusiastic tone of centuries, but this in every country but his own, and the lady from the provinces who dresses like a guy who doesn't cry, and the singularly abnormally the girl who never kissed. I don't think she'd be missed. I'm sure she wouldn't be missed. And the nice priest that is rather rife, the judicial humorist, I've got him on the list. All funny fellows, comic men and clowns of private life, they'd none of them be missed. They'd none of them be missed. An uncompromising kind of such as whatchamacallit, thingamabob, and likewise, well, never mind, and tut, and what's his name, and you know who, but the task of filling up blanks, I rather leave it up to you. But it really doesn't matter whom you place upon the list, for none of them be missed, none of them be missed. P.S. The Mount Diablo code concerns radians and inches along the radians. And first, I would like to say that I found that text available at ZodiacSiteverse.com, run by Richard Grinnell. Big thank you to him and all the things he has shared over there. What is your response to hearing the little list letter? Or you notice anything that is somewhat different than some of the previous Zodiac killer letters? My immediate reaction was, someone is definitely trying to pass himself off as a poet, but no, that's not honest. My immediate reaction was something that the case breakers of all people shared about their Zodiac suspect Gary Francis Post. Last year on the channel, I was doing a regular segment about the disappearance of Donna Lass from 1970, and the case breakers revealed their theory about how Gary Post did indeed abduct and murder Donna Lass when he said, "I put a she in a tree." Somebody, someway, somehow obtained this information about how Gary Post said that statement, "I put a she in the tree," and they thought that meant that Gary Post abducted Donna Lass from State Line, Nevada on September 6th of 1970, murdered her, and she was hanged from a tree. And I think it was Colonel Reb who pointed out that, well, that would be a crime committed by rope, and the Zodiac mailed by rope, by knife, by gun, by fire in the Halloween card on October 27th of 1970, which would have been, I mean, it's a month after the disappearance of Donna Lass, but it's almost 2 months, really, because Donna Lass was abducted in the beginning of September, and the Halloween card was mailed at the end of October, so that's practically 2 months, but it is the following month after her disappearance. And I know that this is going to sound absolutely ridiculous, but believe it or not, I thought that statement from Gary Post, if he did indeed say that, sounded like the little list letter, something that would be appropriate, or it had the similar flow of the language. I know it's just one sentence, "I put a she in the tree," but it had that same type of rhyme. "I put a she in a tree. She would not be missed, she would not be missed." But it definitely goes to show you that the Zodiac perhaps was much more inspired by poetry, or that he wants to be some type of literary mind, but perhaps he just felt that that was incapable, or no one would have paid attention to this guy at all if it weren't for the crimes that he had committed. And I said that I read the text from Richard Grinnell's website, and Richard can correct me if I misstate anything about his Zodiac observations, but I have interviewed him for the Zodiac Killer channel, and I believe that Richard says that he believes that the Zodiac crimes occurred in 1968 and 69, and he does not accept any of the non-canonical crimes like the disappearance of Donna Lass, the attempted abduction of Kathleen Johns, the murder of Sherry Jo Bates? No, because the Zodiac provided all of these details as to how and why the crimes were committed in 68 and 69. I shall state some facts that only I and the police know. Or how about writing the message on Brian Hartnell's car door at Lake Berryessa? Or how about mailing in a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt? And all the other crimes, you can't really tell if the perpetrator committed them or not. But what the Zodiac definitely wanted to do was maintain an audience. He wanted to use those types of crimes to draw attention to himself, and then the letters would have just gone on for decades even after that, or years. I mean, Richard's theory, decades, but years. I mean, this stuff has happened well, well, well over a year after the Lake Herman Road murders, but this person still has the San Francisco Bay Area under his spell, so to speak. But I have to share my own original observation about the Little List letter, and that is that it definitely highlights one of those voices that I was talking about last week. If you didn't hear last week's Zodiac Killer Monday episode, I said that I thought there are three main voices in the Zodiac's writing. One of them is the lonely man who just has nobody to talk to. One of them is the braggadocio who has this type of superiority complex. I'm better than everyone. I'm superior to you. I'm even above the devil. That's why I want to be on top of Mount Diablo. And then the third one is just the person who is very sad, or he talks about there's this thing inside of me that I can't control. I will lose control and I can't stop killing. And with the Little List letter, I definitely notice elements of the lonely man, the sad man theory, where it's like, where he's just very bored and he has no one else to share things with. Okay, so can you guys wear some Zodiac buttons? Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, and even if they're not nice, could you just like, well, wear any type of Zodiac buttons? I mean, come on, please. Somebody pay attention to me. That's what I really see from a lot of the Zodiac's writings. But I think he goes back and forth between these three emotional states. But absolutely, absolutely, the Little List then goes into talking about the braggadocio style of the persona, when he says that he's going to commit all these crimes and they're not going to be missed. I'm going to do this and then I'm going to get away with it. And these people who are weird are going to be killed and forgotten. They will not be missed. So I see the Zodiac going back and forth between three states of being, or maybe personalities, emotional states. Three different kinds of mood swings are found in the Zodiac's letters. And if you would like to dispute any of that with me, you can put your ideas in the comments section down below. I'd be very curious what you think about that. And to move on to the next segment here, I was talking about Amazon.com at the beginning of this episode and some of the book reviews that were left on my own book, Killer on a White Horse. And in one of the reviews, somebody mentioned the Charles River editors briefly, and they did not have favorable things to say about the Charles River editors' books. In fact, this person said that they were just things from Wikipedia. But I decided to put that into Google because I had no real connection to that name. And it turned out one of the books that I had wanted to read is from the Charles River editors, and that is Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer by Zed Simpson. And not only did I want to read that book, I wanted to get in touch with Zed Simpson because I wanted to either get his take on several subjects, and maybe he could even come on the Zodiac Killer channel's Interview with the Experts series. But there appears to be no real contact information for him on their website, and not only that, the name Zed Simpson has been used on several books about Jack the Ripper, all with the same cover graphic, mind you. But in that review on Amazon.com, which was not on my book, mind you, but on someone else's, there was this thing about how the Charles River editors have just taken the Wikipedia articles and they've put them into for-profit books that they're selling. I would hope that that's not the case, because I think that that is just going to cause an enormous amount of problems for them down the road. but I pulled up a free sample of Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer by Zed Simpson off of Amazon. I can't really say that it is just the Wikipedia articles, but there definitely are not citations. But I wanted to give the book a fair chance, and I was reading through, as I said, the section, and there's this part here about December of 1968 that I thought was very bizarre, and that is that toward the end of 1968, however, a new and more sinister headline began to pop up. At first, it was just in California and seemed to be a simply random crime, with a couple being murdered a few days before Christmas. It was a tragic tale, but in California, it was often dismissed as a byproduct of the youth culture of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and that often led young people to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I was very surprised to read that because, of course, December of 1968, this person is talking about the Lake Herman Road murders, which saw the deaths of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, the first confirmed crimes of the Zodiac Killer. And just to associate the deaths of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen with sex, drugs, and rock and roll at all, and this is just 1960s counterculture, right? No, wrong, absolutely not. As far as Faraday and Jensen having anything to do with drugs, David was very famously anti-drug, and Betty Lou Jensen may have done some things like smoking, but I would hardly say that she was into drugs. I thought that was just a very bizarre association. Now, if this person wants to make the case that the killer, the perpetrator, had something to do with sex, drugs, and rock and roll, particularly the drug angle, I think that that's a much bigger conversation to have and a more important conversation to have. As far as rock and roll, though, the Zodiac really doesn't seem to talk too much about rock music. Maybe he's more into things like Gilbert and Sullivan and the Mikado, as well as literature is frequently mentioned throughout the Zodiac letters. But I think that if you want to look at where Lake Herman Road is, it is a shortcut between Benicia and Vallejo, and it's a stopover point. It's really just a parking lot on the side of the road. And when I was reading off a comment from what someone had written out in a previous Q&A session, they even called it a known drug corridor, a place that was frequently used by drug dealers. Of course, you have things like the Ott Brothers gang, the Hells Angels, but sometimes you just have the smaller intermediary gangs that would use places like this. But what I think is more important is it's where teenagers would frequently go, and what some people simply think about is, no matter what their theory is, maybe it does matter what their theory is. Like the people who eliminate the hoax theory, eliminate the twisted multiple killers theories, like the Zodiac Manson connection or something, and those who think that there was just a single Zodiac killer, that just one man devised this plan in 68 and 69, they point to just that. They say that teenagers frequently went to this parking lot at Lake Herman Road, and there's maybe some guys driving up and down every couple of weeks, and there's always a car there. There are always some teenagers there. Maybe some people are drinking beer. Maybe some people are doing other types of drugs. And that's why David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were targeted. It was not about the people. It was not about anything to do with their lifestyles. It was not about anything to do with their behavior or their enemies or any conflicts that David had been in over the course of the past 2 weeks. It was just about the location. The victims were not, important to the killer. It was about the place. And I think that the locations definitely change when you get to the Blue Rock Springs shooting and Presidio Heights, because that could tie more into some type of mathematical theory. With Lake Herman Road, this is a killer who is mostly just trying to go after a secluded area, but it's just that. It's about the area, not about the victims. Now, I will give credit to Zed Simpson in this book here because he talks about how the image of the Zodiac Killer really comes to shape after the Blue Rock Springs shooting, right? Where Darlene Ferrin is murdered and Mike Michaud survives. Then the killer presents himself to the world. He writes letters, the 408 cipher. Then in August of 1969, he says, "This is the Zodiac speaking." And that has really reshaped the entire investigation around the Jensen Faraday murders, because Now, there's no excuse for anything else. There's no way to tie this to any other theory than this is a deranged serial killer. What was the exact word that Zed Simpson used in his book? The idea that there was an unhinged serial killer on the loose was confirmed when he began writing letters to the police and the newspapers, not only claiming responsibility for these killings, but for others that had happened and that had been committed by him. After he stabbed a third couple and then shot a cab driver in cold blood, he began to send in more letters. These, like the earlier ones, were signed with a symbol understood only by the killer. Well, I don't really know if that's true. I mean, this is a Zodiac symbol. It is used on the Zodiac brand of watches. And no, I'm not quite sure I agree with that exact assessment that only the killer understood it. No, if it has some type of alternative meaning, like is it a compass? Is it a Celtic cross? Is it a Unitarian cross? Is it meant to be the taillights of somebody's car? I mean, maybe there is an additional meaning to that, but there definitely are connections between that symbol and the word Zodiac, so I'm not too impressed by that. But because this is a book about the Zodiac Killer and Jack the Ripper, there are lots of comparisons, but I found that in the sample provided, the comparisons are only dealing with a couple sentences saying something to the effect of, okay, maybe the Zodiac was a Jack the Ripper copycat, which I do genuinely believe that he was. But there was also a point that I need to reiterate that I have shared in numerous episodes. I even said this when I appeared on Drew Beeson's live stream about a week ago, and that is that the answers to the Zodiac Killer mystery may very well be found in Jack the Ripper. I've also said numerous times, I believe that there are 3 true crime cases that the Zodiac was very familiar with. Jack the Ripper, the Texarkana Moonlight Murders of 1946, and the murder of Sherry Jo Bates in 1966. I do not believe that Sherry Jo Bates was actually killed by the Zodiac Killer, but I think that he had knowledge of what was going on. I don't know if this is some type of law enforcement connection or some type of journalistic connection, but I definitely believe the Zodiac was very familiar with the murder of Sherry Jo Bates in Riverside, California. And this could be as simple as reading the papers or just living in Riverside at the time, or something to that effect. Some way, somehow, this person knew what was going on. They knew about the letters that were mailed in. They knew about the confession. But there are also alternative theories out there, like Soren Korsgaard, author of America's Jack the Ripper, gives a lot of reasons why he thinks that the Zodiac did not murder Sherry Jo Bates, but instead wrote the Riverside Confession that was shared in November of 1969. She was young and beautiful, but now she is battered and dead. Miss Bates went to a slaughter like a lamb. That one, that, again, the killer did not the Zodiac did not murder Sherry Jo Bates, but took credit for it. And to move on, though, to the Jack the Ripper crimes of 1888, Zed Simpson's book actually begins with additional murders that are not included in the Ripper's activities from August 31st of 1888 until November 9th of 1888. Instead, this book refers to them as the Whitechapel murders, and it even says the first victim of the Whitechapel murders was a middle-aged prostitute named Emma Smith, and to this day there is a heavy debate over whether she was a victim of the Ripper or not. On April 4th of 1888, at about 4 a.m., she stumbled back to her home from a night of turning tricks. Oh, by the way, Zed Simpson frequently calls it that, turning tricks. I wish he wouldn't do that. He says that in the book a lot, but I just felt that's making light of everything. According to her account, she had been beaten and cut after being gang raped and robbed by a group of 4 young men. Mary Russell, who ran to the house, and Annie Lee, who also lived there, insisted on taking her to the London hospital, where Dr. George Haslip examined her and heard her story. However, her loss of blood was so significant that she soon fell into a coma, from which she never awoke, and died 4 days later. Now, if anything, this goes to show something that I've talked about before on the channel, and that is that there is the idea of the Ripper hoax and the Zodiac hoax. The idea that someone is taking credit for murders that they didn't commit. I gave a very clear example of the hoax in the Sherry Jo Bates case about how someone could have written the confession letter even though they didn't actually commit the crime. That's Soren Korsgaard's theory, not mine, though. But with the Ripper hoax, I've said very frequently on the channel, I think it's more plausible than the Zodiac hoax theory, because if it goes to show you that these crimes did happen where people were attacked by the London street gangs, and now why would somebody write in letters taking credit for murders that they didn't commit? Well, according to the journalist Frederick Best in 1931, it was to sell newspapers to generate some type of panic, and Zed Simpson even talks about that a little bit here in his book. But I'll keep going with some of his material. Given that such a sad end was not uncommon for the working women of the East End, the murder did not make a big splash in the news, but there were still questions. The next possible victim of the notorious killer was Martha Tobram, who, like Smith, was middle-aged and had been turning tricks. There he did it again. For some time after having left her husband and children, she was found dead early on the morning of August 7th of 1888, the day after a bank holiday, and witnesses indicated that after she had been drinking at a nearby pub, she had gone with a client to an alley connecting Wentworth Street and Whitechapel High Street around midnight. Several hours later, her mutilated body was found with dozens of stab wounds in the throat, lungs, heart, liver, spleen, stomach, and genitals. Today, many people who study the Ripper case do not believe that Tobram was a victim of the Ripper because the MO was different, and the Ripper slit the throat of the victims in a very particular manner. Well, not to give too much counterbalance, I think that that is definitely not well accepted. When you read things like the Mammoth Book of Jack the Ripper, you will find all types of opinions on that, where they say, no, there are definitely multiple killers for even the Ripper's crimes from August 31st to November 9th, because the incisions were made in different ways. This is definitely some type of surgical work committed by person A and person B. Some people have multiple killers theories, but to connect these crimes to the Ripper, I think, would be very, very difficult, especially when you have someone like Emma Smith here, who says that if she survived and she could say what was going on, she had been beaten, cut after being gang raped and robbed by a group of 4 young men. Is one of those guys the Ripper and the other 3 are not? If anything, that sounds like the explanation has already been provided for us. And as far as Martha Tobram goes, you've just heard that she is being stabbed numerous times, but that sounds like a stabbing as opposed to any type of Jack the Ripper style mutilation where some type of organ is being cut out, or there is just a large section of her body that has been mutilated and removed. So I also have very large doubts that those crimes were actually committed by the same person. But Zed Simpson does want to conclude this chapter in the book by saying that one of the main investigators in the case, Walter Dew, believed that both Smith and Tobram were victims of Jack the Ripper. And, he was an investigator on the case, and I am not, but just looking at this as an absolute fresh set of eyes, it appears that these crimes did happen frequently, where women were not only murdered, but mutilated, beaten, and sometimes even raped in London back in 1888. And the idea that someone is writing in letters taking credit for it to create a type of panic or some sort of persona around the Ripper case is not beyond belief. We had a couple questions about this recently, and no, I don't endorse the Ripper hoax theory because I definitely do not know what happened. Absolutely not. I think that it's somewhat plausible. It makes sense when I can talk about it in that exact way. But if it turns out that there was a single killer, I wouldn't dispute that with anyone. And if they had some way of linking things together with some type of new forensic evidence or some new technology revealed this, absolutely, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I would be rather surprised, though, that there was such a small period of activity that the Ripper didn't go on to commit additional murders in the 1800s up to the 1900s, or maybe as Zed Simpson was just writing there, that the crimes began earlier on. Because I think with those types of not only murders but mutilations, you would have a serial killer who was operating at a greater amount of time, a larger period of activity, or what some people call the serial killer's reign of terror. But what do you think about these Jack the Ripper crimes and comparing this person to the Zodiac killer? And, I will bring up the infographics video again. The infographics channel did one on Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer, and they simply just said that Jack the Ripper is way more vicious, frightening, heinous, and brutal than the Zodiac Killer. Absolutely. The Zodiac really is a very mild and benign serial killer compared to Jack the Ripper. I mean, the stabbings, the mutilations, the Zodiac barely touched the victims at all. He just snuck up on people who were defenseless, or rendering them defenseless, like at Lake Berryessa tying up Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, and after they have been incapacitated or when they're unable to fight back, then the Zodiac Killer stabbed them. So really, the Zodiac is somewhat of a coward and a weakling, and just definitely someone who is not any of those adjectives that I just said: brutal, heinous, or vicious. But I said at the end of this episode I would go on to talk about the Polaroid mystery, which I shared on the Anything Goes segment last Friday, and I wanted to give a shorter, more condensed version of what happened with the disappearance of Tara Calico. Thank you to everybody who listened to that episode and left comments, by the way. But the nutshell version is Tara Calico went missing on September 20th of 1988 while she was on a bike ride, which was actually about 36 miles, which she did very regularly. It was her morning ritual, even to a certain extent. Maybe not every single day, but she did this frequently. And one day she simply did not return. Her bike was also never found. However, they did find her Walkman on the side of the road, like a cassette player. And in 1989, roughly 9 months later, two Polaroid photographs were found in a parking lot of a convenience store in Florida, and they showed two children that appeared to be bound, and they definitely had duct tape over their faces, or some type of black gaffer's tape, so to speak, that was obstructing their oral area. And one of them resembled Tara Calico, and this has launched a debate that's been going on for nearly 30 years. Is that Tara Calico in the photograph? If yes, where is she? If no, why not? And my overall assessment of this was that no, that is not Tara Calico in the Polaroid, because when you compare the images side by side, Tara Calico has a very round brow ridge, not the eyebrow. Everyone's looking at the hair on the eyebrow. That changes with the facial expression. Tara Calico's actual bone structure is quite different. Especially if you look at the brow ridge, hers is much rounder. The girl in the Polaroid has a very flat brow ridge, and also to the credit of Corey Toomey, who made the illustration, the Nasian bone is much higher for Tara than it is for the Polaroid girl. And even if you just think about that as the bridge of her nose, with Tara, hers is in a different place than the girl in the Polaroid. And there are also some other things that would suggest that even that this is not someone who's actually held captive. The girl is kept up with regular hygiene. It appears that she has shaved her legs recently. It's possible that the boy in the photograph is trying not to laugh underneath his duct tape that is covering his mouth, and there's a book that is placed there in the foreground, which suggests that someone may have been reading it recently, or that it was given to somebody. And if someone were actually being tied up in the back of a van, and their hands are tied behind their back, or bound behind their back, as one of you guys said in the comment section, what is the point of giving them a book if they're not able to do anything with it? So that all leads us to think that this is staged in some way. Now, other people out there have pointed out, okay, maybe that's not Tara Calico in the photograph, but could these actually be abducted children who are held captive? Oh yeah, absolutely. I have no idea, really who's in the photograph. But I will give a shout out to Russell Santana, who says, I'm not so sure it's easy to interpret the facial expression of the male child without being able to see the whole face, and just judging by the eyes, there could be more than one emotion that could have been produced on his face. Oh yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's possible, just sort of stating the possibilities. And also, many of you guys in the comments section were pointing out something that I said when talking about the photo being staged. I had used the words like a prank or a joke, maybe something that was organized through a family, like someone is just messing around, so to speak, but you guys in the comments section pointed out that it doesn't have to be either one of those. It could be a type of creative project. The book there in the photo is written by V.C. Andrews, who wrote Gothic-style novels. Maybe somebody was doing this to recreate the scene from some other novel or a movie, and there is a type of creative reason that isn't simply a prank or a joke. The scenario that I talked about in the last episode was a father with his two kids, and they'd be like, okay, we're going to show this to mom. Okay, now act real scared. No, sons, don't laugh. Don't laugh. Be like your sister. She looks like she's scared. Because you can't actually see any of the restraints on the kids' hands. They are seemingly bound, but we don't actually know if they are or not. And I would like to give a shout out to YouTube user Cole Z, who says, I don't think the picture is a prank because I just think someone would have known the people in it, or they themselves would have come forward by now, but I also don't think it's the same girl. Well, I'm definitely in agreement with you there that I don't believe that it is the same girl in the photograph. I don't believe Tara Calico is the Polaroid girl, but is this just a prank or something else? Why didn't somebody else come forward? Or if the girl in the photo was just with her family, why didn't she come forward? Why didn't somebody recognize, no, that isn't Tara Calico, that's so-and-so, I went to school with her. I really don't know. Because with the Long Island serial killer mystery, which I talk about on Wednesdays, I just did the case of Peaches Jane Doe, a woman who is still unidentified to this day. But they call her Peaches Jane Doe because she had a peach tattoo on her body. And the authorities thought, well, we have this tattoo, why don't we take a photo of it and publish it in a tattoo magazine, and maybe the artist will recognize it, the person who did the tattoo. And that plan worked. I mean, someone says they gave a tattoo like that to an African-American woman, and Peaches Jane Doe was an African-American woman. She was found dead on Long Island, and she was from New York, said the tattoo artist. But what he said was, yeah, I gave a tattoo like that to an African-American woman, but she was there in the tattoo parlor with her mother, sorry, with her aunt and her cousin. I repeat, she was there with her aunt and her cousin, family members, because, they're sitting there with her while she's getting the tattoo, so he's overhearing these conversations. I'm sorry I said mother for a second. It's the aunt and the cousin. And why didn't they recognize it? I mean, it's been over 20 years. Peaches Jane Doe died in 1997. Why didn't they just say, oh yeah, that's my cousin's tattoo. I was with her at the tattoo parlor in New Haven, Connecticut when she got that, and we were talking to this tattoo artist, and my mother was there, her aunt. So why didn't somebody come forward with that? I just simply do not know. Now, it is possible that that is just a generic peach that was used in several other tattoo shops, and maybe the guy who remembered the African-American woman was thinking of a different person, but I tend to believe that she was indeed Peaches Jane Doe, the person that this New Haven tattoo artist gave the tattoo to was indeed Peaches Jane Doe. But I don't know why someone wouldn't come forward. It's possible that people just don't recognize this, or the information doesn't get out there, or I have really no idea. But please tune in for a new episode on the Long Island serial killer this Wednesday, and if you're listening to this in the future, firstly, thank you for listening almost all the way to the end. I will have several episodes out on the Long Island serial killer here on this channel. There's a playlist, and eventually I'm going to make a playlist just for the videos about the victims. But this Wednesday I'm going to be doing one on the suspects. I'm not going to do individual suspect profiles for the victims, but instead I will do one just overall in a general way about the suspects, because I found some very interesting articles when people were criticizing not each suspect side by side like the way we do in maybe the Zodiac case, but they are criticizing the investigation, and those things are maybe just a little bit more valuable. So please tune in on Wednesday for a new episode about the Long Island serial killer. And finally, I would like to leave you with something that is kind of like a challenge question, except it's not a question. It would be very well to tie into that stuff in the beginning. But I did a video on AstroPsych 400 earlier this year when I was talking about assertiveness training, how to be more assertive. And one point that I encountered recently was the concept of creating an alter ego for yourself. And if my name is Ned DeHaan, well, then I can walk around and say that my name is John Smith. Now, I shouldn't use that one because John Smith is a researcher in the Moore Murray case, and, well, I'll give him the name all to himself, not to mention that one adventurer, but that's the idea. They say that if you create an alter ego for yourself, you'll notice that you can become more confident. And I was like, really? Someone's actually encouraging people to do this? It just sounds so bizarre. But the first thing that I thought of was there was this series of episodes that I did on the show Two and a Half Men, well after Charlie Sheen left the show. This is with Ashton Kutcher during his time. But the character of Alan Harper is played by John Cryer, Charlie Sheen's brother, and he develops an alter ego named Jeff Strongman. I know it sounds really tacky, Jeff Strongman, but he finds that when he's pretending to be this person named Jeff, he's just that. He's more confident, he's more assertive, good things are happening to him, and this really goes against a lot of these self-help things that I've encountered, or psychology things that I've encountered, or just any type of hard talk advice that I've found online, because every other source is just saying, be honest. I mean, what's going to happen when you're going up to people and you're telling them all these things that are not true, and you're just using other people to play a game? What would happen if your Jeff Strongman, John Smith alter ego, actually developed a friendship, so to speak? And I was listening to a video about this on Free Domain Radio, which has since been deplatformed. But some guy was even talking about how he did this online, but he pretended to be a woman, and he developed a friendship with a man, but he has this little fake profile, and he actually talked to the guy for 5 years, not romantically, but he's purely a friend, and he's like, okay, well, how do I tell this guy the truth? Like, what's the best way to go about this? Because I think I've been a very good advisor in his life, and I really helped him through the hard times, but he thinks I'm somebody else. And the host just said, you don't. That's the price you have to pay for being dishonest. I mean, you exported all your self-worth into this fake personality, then now you're saying, like, well, what do I do about it? There's nothing you can do. You lied. So, I don't know, you can weigh in the comments section if you think that that would be a practical way to do it. I mean, I guarantee you'll probably be able to be more assertive, because it's not like a moral and ethical exercise. It's an assertiveness training exercise. But I think that it's just doomed for failure. I totally can comprehend why they're encouraging you to do it, because there won't be any consequences. You're not you. You're John Smith. You're Jeff Strongman. You could be Charlie Sheen if you wanted to. It'd be like, winning. I mean, if you were to choose to do that. But I was just surprised that somebody was actually giving that out as advice, and I found it a couple weeks ago, but well after I did the assertiveness training episode. I don't even remember whose idea it was, but I just wanted to share that at the end. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening to this week's Zodiac Mondays, as well as talking about all the other subjects: Jack the Ripper, the Long Island serial killer, Terra Calico, and of course the challenge questions. If you would like to respond to any of this material, you can put your ideas in the comment section down below. You can also write me at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. My personal Facebook is also in the description box. There is a page for the show as well, Black Box Online Radio. And there is always BlackBoxNed88 over on Instagram. And one more time, though, I'll recommend the book to you, The Zodiac Killer and Jack the Ripper by Zed Simpson. And if you truly, truly want something to read, you can go get Killer on a White Horse by me, Ned DeHaan, and you can leave a wonderful review. Or if you have any hate mail that you want to share, if you think that I am a jerk, you can send that to me too, and maybe it'll work into one of these episodes in the future. Okay. I will see you guys over on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.